Hello. Hello, guys. How are you doing today? All right? Not too tired? Thanks, everybody, for coming in and attending this talk. Just a quick disclaimer. The title is obviously different from the one that you've seen on the printed version of the program. It's just because it was changed in the last week and the program was already printed out. But the fundamental reasons behind the talk are exactly the same. It's just the title that is changed. I'm very pleased to see quite a big group today on a talk which is not about microservices, which is usually not what is happening today at conferences. So what we're going to be talking about today is some sort of experience that we had in our career starting as a developer, and then things that we went through to actually try to improve the way we work and to actually help the business to improve as a whole. How many people are developers here in the room? Okay, quite a few of them. How many of you are not technical people who don't write code and do something else? Nobody, quite good. Okay, so hopefully, for the developers in the room, at the end of this talk, you might be knowing more about some of the tips and tricks that we use in our experience to make your life easier and better at work. So when I started my career as a developer, my main concern was to be very, very good at writing code. So I was given a task, and all I wanted to do is to do that task in the best possible way. So I was going at conferences to learn, new practices, new techniques, new patterns, new programming languages, to be better at being a very, very good software developer, a very, very good coder. But as the time goes by, and over time, I started to understand that it was not just about how to do things, but in order for me to actually be an effective member of the business and up to business to actually succeed and grow, I also started to need to understand why we are doing what we're doing, why are the problems that we're trying to solve. And so kind of trying to improve my skills, not only be a very, very good coder, but also improve the communication between me and the rest of the business. And I really, really struggle at that. So how many people in the room struggle with that? Quite a few. Okay. We're very lucky.
So we seem to be very good at working as developers. So the fact you're all here is a great testament that we're all learning. We want to get better at what we do. We want to write great code. We want to add value to our business. I would suggest that we're even good at working in teams. So we're good at kind of getting into cross-functional units now, figuring out how to work together, cross-collaborating with other teams maybe. But then there's always been that gap and that bit that I've struggled with a little bit in saying, right, well, what about management? Or what about those other people in the business that aren't technical? And how do we step out of that? And how do we influence the business in which we work as a whole? So how do we make the environment that we're in a much better place to be? And that's really what we'd like to just tap into, just a couple of things. We don't have all the answers. We're just a couple of guys that have kind of gone through the development experience and gone off and sort of specialized in different areas. But there's just a couple of things that I hope that you'll find useful.
So my name is Domenico. Nice to meet you guys. I'm a developer, so I write code. I work for Spectrix. We do a ticketing system for venues. All you should know about me is that I'm also Italian. The things about being Italian is that I might have a very strong accent. So if I'm not clear enough, please stop me and I will repeat myself.
And I'm Dan, so you can find us on Twitter there. I've been software developer for the last 18 years, so varying from desktop publishing to manufacturing, lately fintech, and then now into the SaaS business that we hear about, Spectrix. So just to tell you a little bit about Spectrix, no one will have probably heard of us. We are a B2B business, so you will never find us in retail, but really our mission is to disrupt the entertainment sector from a technical perspective. How do we enable theaters? How do we enable sports stadiums, and if we're thinking about in the future, et cetera, to really break into and make the most of their business, create better experiences for their customers, and so on. So that's kind of what we're about, and that's our mission. So there seems to be a lot, and we've said this already, there's a lot of talk around all these different types of either tools or great books, great research, lovely conferences that you come to and learn a whole bunch of fantastic things. But then you'll find that There's also a lot of other great books and ideas and thinking around how to run businesses, how to be a better manager, how to be more effective in making sure that you're delighting your customers with all the products that you have. But there's nothing really that I've come across that is bridging this gap. And I guess for us as developers, it's like, well, how do we tap into some of this as well? And how do we really start to influence that? Another thing that we find hard, and I have personally, is that we tend to feel like we're at grassroots level. And so that can mean that we just sometimes just feel like we just get told, just hit that deadline, or just implement that feature, or we just need to stop those bugs. And I've personally struggled with saying, well, how do I influence that change? How do we improve that? Does that resonate with anyone? Have any of you had that experience? Great. Okay, so I'm hoping that you're in the right place. And so what we're going to cover, just to go through that, is how do we start to affect a change? So you might see something in your business that you want to figure out how you want to improve. We're going to specifically be talking about something technical, but actually it could relate to process changes as well, or how the organization is designed, so on and so forth. The first thing we want to cover is, well, how do you prioritize? If anything like me, we look and we can see a whole bunch of different areas that we want to improve. And actually, it's probably quite key that we focus in on just that one thing. So Dom's going to talk about prioritization. We're then also going to talk about how we can clearly articulate that problem. And by what I mean by that is not just for ourselves and making it clear for our teams, but also for the business as well. And finally, the big part of the talk is really some influencing ideas that we can start to use, and maybe you can just take back with you and even just start as you go back to your offices to say, right, how do we start to change where we work and make it better, make it great, make it an awesome place to be.
Cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about prioritization, and specifically prioritization about what problem to tackle. So for me, being an engineer, I tend to not be very, very frustrated and not happy if myself and the team I work with, we do not deliver at the pace that we would like. So we do not see that we are delivering fast enough business for the value for the business. And so this is the kind of things that we are looking for. So we are looking for problems that are becoming an obstacle for us as a team to succeed, to be very effective at what we do and really help the business. So if you were to ask to the members of your team, what is the problem, guys, that do you think we have? Why we are not being as fast as we would like? You know, why on a Friday night, you know, the week is over and, you know, we go home with a sense of frustration. We haven't really achieved as much as we would have liked. So somebody else might say it's because, you know, it takes ages to build our solution. So we waste a lot of time just watching on the screen, waiting for the solution to build, just because I changed one line of code. So we're wasting a lot of time. Somebody else might say, we're not really good at testing. So it seems like we introduce a lot of bugs anytime we change the code. So we need to improve that. Somebody else might say, you know what, the code base we work with is very poor. It's very hard to change. It's very hard to maintain. There is a lot of dependencies going on. I do not really understand it. Somebody else might say it's because we don't have a very good deployment pipeline, deployment strategy. We're quite good at writing code, but it looks like we need to wait at least a week, 10 days, in order for this new feature that we've written to actually go in production, our customer to start use it. Somebody else might say it's because we have a monolith. You know, if we only had microservices, everything would be fine. Actually, those are real problems. You know, we might have one of these problems, we might have all of them. But the thing is that we would never be in a position where we could effectively go and tackle all of these problems once. That's just not going to work. So we do need to understand what is the one problem that I want to tackle, and how am I going to identify it. So how am I going to understand what is the thing that is really worth looking at right now and fix it, because it's causing the most pain for my team and eventually for the business, obviously. So we're just going to quickly talk about some of the prioritization technique that I've been using in the last few years, and that worked for me. So it's something that you can go away and try yourself and see whether you can work for you in your context. So the first one is with the bottleneck one, so really looking at what is the bottleneck in the process. We can look at the cost and impact metrics. I'm going to explain what that is in a moment. And then kind of risks against opportunities as a technique to decide what to do next. So let's talk about bottleneck quite quickly. So this is a board. Is it familiar to any of you? Do you guys do anything like Scrum or Kanban? You guys see this board? Right? So it's just a bunch of stages of our development process. And so we can quickly quite see, this is a very powerful visual tool that helps us to visualize where the bottleneck is at the moment. So we see that we're quite good in writing code. We don't have anything. We have one store in progress right now, a couple of them in testing. But there is a pile of stuff that is waiting to be released. That's value that's actually ready to go out there and, helping the business to make some money. And it's not happening. So that's it. Okay, you didn't realize that's our bottleneck. So that's a very simple tool that might work in some context, just to look at your board and say, okay, where is the struggle? Where are we spending time? It's in here. We're not releasing efficiently. We need to do something about that. Another way of looking at it would be the cost and impact metric. So what we're going to do here, we've got a very simple diagram which represents all the problems that we have or we think we have, and how much expensive would it be to fix those problems and what kind of impact they're going to have. So in this case, obviously, what you want to tackle first is the things that are going to be quite cheap to fix, but they're going to have the biggest impact. So you want to focus probably in this area here. I'm keep using the manual release just as an example. And
it's worth saying that there's no metrics on here on purpose. So the idea is this is very quick and simple, and really what you're doing is you're comparing each problem to itself and saying, is this one more costly, less costly? Is this going to have more of an impact or less of an impact? That's all you're going for, very quick and simple.
Then another technique that I found useful sometimes is the risks and opportunity. So you kind of compare the two things. So on one side, you have the risks. So something that might happen at some point, within your code base, within your infrastructure, within your architecture, which might cause, if this thing happens, it may cause some impacts. And we're trying to understand what is the level of the impact that this is gonna cause, and how likely is these things to happen. And on the other side, you're gonna have the opportunity, so the thing that you might do, which might open some sort of new doors for the business. So kind of example here, we have on the left-hand side, some of the risks. We know that we are struggling with network bandwidth, so that's a risk. If our volume of traffic was to be increased quite quickly, that would have a very, very negative impact on the business. Although the likelihood of that to happen is quite small because we're not really reaching many users at the moment. But on the other hand, we're struggling with DB capacity, and the likelihood of that is quite high. It's going to happen anytime because we know we're running on the edge, and that's also going to have a very, very negative impact. So you probably want to focus in this area. And on the other hand, you might say, if I want to introduce and start to do new things, so to open up new opportunities for the business, what's going to be the cost of that, and what kind of benefit is going to bring for the business? And this is one of the exercises that we did in Spectrix. So this is how it looks like in reality. This is a real exercise that we did. Right, so let's say that using one of those techniques, we have, as a team, identified that releases is the things that we want to tackle next because it's causing a lot of pain. And I want to make a point here that regardless of process you want to use in order to do your prioritization, it has to be a team effort. Because it has to be shared, there must be an agreement within the team that is the thing that we all agree is causing the most pain. Therefore, we want to fix it. So let's say that we realize that releases is what we want to fix. So what do we do about it? First thing we need to do, we need to actually be able to articulate the problem. So if I think about releases and deployment as an engineer, what I have to think about something like, it's a very slow process. It's a PowerShell script I need to run. It's a very old technology. It's not tested. I don't have any test environment to test this. I'm going to run in production. It breaks all the time. It's not repeatable. So when it breaks, I can't just rerun it. It's not that important. I need to go in the PowerShell script, change something. I introduce even more risk. So I'm very annoyed about this. So the team is very annoyed about this. Why the business does not see this? It's a problem. It's a real problem. And actually, if you think about this, all these concerns and the way that we're looking at the problem so far, it's very much from an engineering perspective. So what does this mean for the business? Yes, the business say, yes, it's not tested, it's low, but why should I care? You know, what is the problem that it's causing for me? And actually, if you just rephrase that to something that not technical people can understand, the message will land much more effectively. So, you know what? It is a slow process. It means that, you know, every time we need to release, we're losing 3 men days for our tech ops department to work on this. Instead, they should be working on some more exciting project that should help us to move to the cloud, for example. Because it's not tested, we tend to introduce bugs. So then another 2 days of developers just working to fix the bug, while they should be, you know, working on some new features, you know, to actually really help the product to evolve. And so the result is that we create value, we can't release it. So you build the car, you can't use it. So the business does not make any money out of it. So you articulate the problem, and then you go to the non-technical people, the business, the stakeholders, and ask time to fix it. Look, this is causing pain for us. We need to fix it. You're expecting, you know, that to get a yes, but actually you get a no. So how many people start to get time to fix technical stuff? A few. Okay, you're very lucky. So tell you a story. So I was working at a company in London a while ago, and I was looking after the payment system. So they had a kind of a monolith. So the payment system was within the monolith and was quite a complicated piece of code. And so the business was planning for the future ahead quite a few changes to the way that we did transaction and payments. So they want to do fraud detection, use some sort of new payment gateways. And the first thing that we quickly realized in the team is that, look, that's all fine. We're going to deliver that. But what we need to do, we need to have some time to actually pull this code out of the monolith first, so we can actually start working on all these exciting features on a very fresh new code base, which we can develop and deploy in isolation. And that didn't land anywhere. So the business didn't allow me to do that. So they forced us to work on the monolith. And then eventually, as this was becoming an actual problem for the business, you know, 6 months later, which was already too late, then okay, maybe it was a good idea to build it out on the monolith. So the question I was asking myself, we know there is a problem, we feel the pain, we have articulated that problem in a very business-oriented way. Why the hell are these people not helping me? Why is that done?
So we want to really start looking, well, what could have I done in my history? What could have Dom done in that example that would have changed the outcome? So we've learned a few tips and tricks, like we've said, that we're going to share, but it's not a silver bullet. We don't have all the answers. It takes a lot of perseverance and hard work as well. The thing with I've found anyway, when we're a developer and I see something that's wrong and I want to change it, no one's asking me to do it. I might not even get a thank you for doing it because I'm probably treading on people's toes and they're just getting really annoyed with me. Why do you want to change stuff? We've always done it like this. Or, you know, you're a cost to the business. Just kind of get on with it. And so that idea of, well, why am I doing this? And I guess for me, that intrinsic motivation comes from, I want to make the place I work a brilliant place to be, not just for me, but for everyone around. So we're going to talk about extending the T shape, and we'll come to what that is in a minute if you don't know. How we deal with conflict, knowing who it is that we need to influence. We'll talk about a ladder of engagement, and finally, the importance of milestones. So who's heard about being a T-shaped developer? Okay, there's a few of you. So the concept's been around for a little while, and really what it's saying is within a cross-functional team, everyone's going to have a specialism. So you have something that you're just really, really core at. And what makes a very effective functional team is when you're not just deep-rooted and thinking about what you're doing, but you also have a general understanding and a knowledge of the other areas of that team. So for example, in my world, I was a back-end developer, so typically working on APIs, integrations into databases, that kind of thing. But actually realized quite quickly I wanted to get very close to what the operations team were doing and the people that I was working with. I wanted to understand the performance of our system, well, mainly because I was on call a lot and I was coming in over weekends to try and do the load testing. I also wanted to understand about database performance as well and how did the failovers work, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea of that T-shape is very key to kind of a successful Scrum team. What I want to suggest, though, is that we actually extend that a bit further. And we start saying, well, how do we think about what is it that the people that we want to talk with, what is the language they use? What is that terminology? Do we understand, for example, the difference between capital expenditure and operational expenditure and how that impacts how they've planned their forecasting and revenue and P&L? Do we know the difference between an EBITDA and our net profit? Do we know about the CRM activity or the marketing activity or the different sales pipelines? So the challenge for us is, right, how do we step out of what we're doing day to day and just start to understand a little bit about what those different other teams in the business are doing? I recently met with our VP of sales and was talking, and we're starting to build a good relationship. She's new in the team. I'm trying to find out about her world. And I learned some great things about sales I never knew before. And very simple 3-step rule. It's got to be in threes for me to remember it, otherwise I'll forget. But the first one was when you're selling to someone, and this is where we heard talking to our clients, you need to go and tell them that what they've got isn't quite right, and they need to figure out how to fix it. The second thing is you've got to tell them why, when they fix it, your solution is the one is the one they want to choose. And the third message you want to get across in a sales pitch is why they need to buy it now. So you kind of got 3 things there that they're trying to do in sales. And I was like, okay, that's really useful for me. So when she's about to go on a sales pitch, I've got to make sure that the system's performing a certain way, that she's got a bit of a pitch or that nice little inspirational feature there that she can sell. So that was really, really valuable. And found that really when we're asking people, for example, from finance to understand technical things, it's actually worth taking a step towards their world and helping to understand. I was a tech lead for a while, this is a long time ago, 6-7 years ago, on a greenfield project with a director from a commerce background. He'd never worked with tech teams before, didn't understand the lingo, didn't know about web development, and to be honest, I didn't know about his financials, so I didn't know about savings accounts and current accounts and mortgages and that kind of thing particularly much. And so I just made an effort of saying, right, how do I get close to his world? And what I tried was just dropping in every couple of days just for a quick chat. So, how's that meeting with that client going? What's the net rate that we're going to get off that deal that you're making? And just trying to understand and show a little bit of an interest and build that relationship. And that did 2 key things. The first is it built a good trust relationship so that when I said, Simon, there's something technically I really need to get done. This is causing us pain. He would go, yeah, of course. I trust you. Get on and do it. The second thing was that actually he would then take a step towards my world and want to understand the technical challenges we had and want to start speaking my language. And I just found that really useful. When you're speaking the same dialogue with someone, it really, really helps.
One thing that I later realized about that story I was telling you about the company I was in London and the payment system is that at the time, I just joined the company. And I was trying to convince the CTO of the company to do that, to start to pull out stuff out of the money. I didn't have no relationship with that guy. So he sounds like, okay, you're coming here, you're just telling us how to do things. It sounds a bit weird.
And it's hard to do if you don't know them. So the second thing we want to talk about is conflict. So has anyone heard that phrase, if you get 2 developers in a room, you'll end up with 3 opinions? Right? We're all very opinionated, and I think that's great. That's what breeds creativity. It what allows us to, as teams, be more effective than we are as our own, and it's a very, very good thing. But it can cause conflict. I was on a different project, and we were late. The business were getting a bit frustrated. We've been struggling with releases. We'd done some funky branching strategy on this project, which meant it was like a merge hell. And we're trying to get this thing out the door. And the CEO had just had a meeting with my project manager. So the project manager came out a little bit stressed and not in a great mood. And I said to him, oh, do you want me to go and chat with the CEO? That was the wrong thing to say. He took off like a rocket. He was shouting, why don't you go and speak to the CEO? Why don't you tell him why it's late? Why don't you tell him why it's your fault? And I was like, whoa. And I took a step back and I thought, well, what was going on there? Why was he doing that? What was going on inside of him? So it's obviously loads of stress that had been caused. He obviously had a bit of blame. All the factors around why that was late wasn't really his fault. And so I just caught him at that wrong time. I seem to be doing this a lot. I got into another conversation with an architect, and we were chatting about how we wanted to progress on a particular feature and take something forward. And I just felt that his solution was a bit too up in the clouds. It's going to take too long. And actually, we could definitely just take a few short steps to get there. And he got quite aggressive. And in the meeting, he said, I don't want you telling anyone that. Keep your nose out. And I was going, whoa. And again, just that disagreement. So I was like, why is that happening? Where is the trust? Where's that safety gone? I have a son, Joseph. He's going to be 7 soon. And he is an absolute Lego maniac. He loves it. I mean, I love Lego. Did any of you grow up with Lego? Was that? Yeah, so great. And it's getting more complicated now. So when I was younger, it was a few bricks. You built what you want, and you couldn't really go wrong. Now you have a manual the size of a Bible that you have to go through page by page. And he had one that was 10 to 12, so it's a little bit ahead of him, and proud dad, just leaving him to do his own thing. And he got about 3/4 of the way through and realized at a key point that one of the key bricks was in the wrong place, completely in the wrong place. And so his mother said to him, can I help you? And she sat down, and he just threw his toys out the cart. So he smashed it down, and he threw a massive strop in a temper. And what is the point of all this? Why am I telling you these 3 stories? And really it's this, is that when we're angry, when we're enraged, when we're infuriated, when we're in that state of conflict, nothing good can come from it. That's what I say to Joseph all the time when he's wrestling with his anger. In that mode, take yourself up to your bedroom, because nothing good is going to come with it. It's the same when we're meeting with someone. If we face that disagreement as we're trying to push a change through, and we realize we get in that state, nothing good's going to come from it. So why is this happening? So we have many different states that psychologists say our brain operates in, depending on sort of the wave frequency. And the 2 that I want to talk about are kind of wakeful states. The first is the alpha state. And typically, I'll just ask you, when do you have your best ideas? When do you feel like you've just cracked that great problem, or you've just tackled something from a different way? When do you do that? Describe the environment. What are you doing? Shower. I get it, yep. Before you go to sleep. Yes. Sorry? When you're relaxed? While sleeping, dreaming even, yep. Any more? Who here has those best creative thoughts when they're in the middle of an intense conversation trying to get their point across? Does anyone get that? One person. He thrives off that. But it's true, isn't it? Our best ideas are when we're taking the dog for a walk, or we're just drifting off to sleep, or we're completely relaxed. That's our alpha state. That's our creative thinking, free-flowing, and we feel safe. We don't feel attacked. The second part I want to talk about is our beta state. And that tends to be our more conscious state. That's our hearing presence, probably where I am at the moment. And it's good for fight or flight. It's not very good for being creative. It's good for getting into arguments. And it's good for feeling a little bit unsafe. So we're in this beta state. We're feeling stressed. We're probably going to be defensive. How do we move over to this alpha state? So conflict starts normally like this, something like this. This project manager, he attacked me. It was a personal thing. He wanted to go and unleash blame. My response was something like this. It was defense. Calm down, Vince. It's not all my fault. I didn't know X, Y, Z, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. To which he normally responds, but I told you it was like that. That's exactly what we said. We discussed this 2 weeks ago in that meeting at 4:15, etc., etc., etc. And as a result, before you know it, we're in conflict. There's a great little book by a chap called Neil Denny, who I know, I've had the privilege to meet. And he talks a lot on conflict resolution. Believe it or not, he's a divorce lawyer. But what he's done is he realized that he's part of the problem, and so now what he tries to do is a part of what he does is to say, how do we bring people to collaborate together? How do we work on that together and make sure that we're collaborating and working rather than being against each other? And what he talks about in this book is this idea of conversational riffs. Do any guitar players here? Any piano players play any instruments, anything like that? So the idea with a guitar is that you will play a certain riff and get used to it. Now, I've played the guitar for 20 years, but I'm still completely rubbish. It's yeah. And but you kind of get used to playing like 3 or 4 riffs. And you practice them a lot. And so typically when I pick up a guitar, I'll go to those 3 or 4 songs that I know, and that's what I'll typically play. What Neil suggests is that actually we should think of another riff. We should practice something else. When we're in this mode, we are playing the same riffs. We get attacked, and so we play defense. They then respond with a counterattack. And what Neil suggests is that actually we should do something else. I'm going to have a go at you for get that project being late. And rather than me going, I'm going to play defense, it's not my fault, hang on, how about I change that riff? How about it becomes, wow, I'm really sorry to hear that you're feeling that way. Why don't we grab a coffee later and I just want to talk about it more. You invite them. You want to know and acknowledge that they're there. You encourage them and say, do you know what, I really think you're onto something there. We need to make sure this doesn't keep happening because obviously it's affecting you. How do we work that through together? You acknowledge that their position. And even add some agreement. So yes, we are late. It isn't quite going to plan. How do we help make that better? And pile on a mountain of yeses. Now, like any riff, when you first try it, it feels really, really hard. It doesn't feel very natural. It feels quite awkward. But as you practice and you get better and better, you just see that it helps, particularly in these intense situations. How do you think that someone would respond if we did this instead? What would happen here? Sorry? Confusion, perhaps. Yeah, really? You do care about me? Yeah, you might have thought you've read a book about how to deal with teenage children. Empathetic? Yeah. So should it start to show empathy? Do you think he's going to be more on your side or less on your side? Do you think project manager would have been more or less? More, I think. And actually, where we want to get to is the idea that we want to be in collaboration. We really want to work that down and say, right, how do we collaborate? Even when we don't agree. Disagreement is fine. Disagreement is good. But when we get enraged by it, nothing good's going to come out of that. But how do we keep it so that we can still manage that conversation in a positive way? It takes a lot of practice. So we've talked about extending the T-shape, and we've talked about dealing with conflict. Next, we want to talk about knowing who to influence. Who are the people that you want to go after and really target? Say there's a change like the CTO that you really want to talk about. How do we figure out how to influence that person? So there's a great talk by Chris Young and Kate Gray called Winning Hearts and Minds of People. I was privileged to see this at Leeds, Scotland years ago. And this really left an impact on me. But the idea was that Kate used to be on the campaign trail. She was a political advisor. And she framed people through the spectrum as your voters. So who are going to be those people that have your back? They believe in what you're doing no matter what. Completely on the opposite side, of course, you've got those people who are against your idea no matter what. And then in the middle, you've got those people that will probably for you at the moment and maybe against you for the moment. And that's your target. Those people are what they call your swing votes in electoral politics. This is where you spend your effort and your energy. If you go and spend all your time trying to get someone over here to understand and be part of what you're doing, knowing they'll never ever move from their position, that's just a lot of frustration and a lot of time misspent. Likewise, over here, your strong backers are convinced they're on your side. Actually, you should think smarter about how you use them to help you influence more other people. But really, it's these people over here. And saying, right, how do I help them to understand why I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do? How do I understand their position a little bit more? How do I work with them closer, build relationships? One thing I wanted to add, though, onto this a little bit is that in a voting system, everyone's vote is equal. Great. In business systems, that's not the case. There are going to be people that have more decision-making power and people that have less. And so if you had a similar sort of axis across the bottom with your backers and your opponents, but then charted something like this, I think if you want to spend your energy, I'd say you really want to focus your energy on the people that are the key decision makers that are in your swing vote area. So who are those people that are really going to make a big difference for you? And it might have started off with something like this. So the CEO's probably got the final say, but actually he'll just do whatever our architect says. So he's the person that we really need to talk to. Now, the sales manager, she's very, very good friends with an architect. And she's on your side. So this is why she's a great influencer. So actually you could say, do you know what? You already have that relationship. I'm trying to do this. Help me to understand how we can talk to this architect and help them to know which way to go. Use that relationship. Likewise, you might have someone, for example, over here, there's someone in your team, you know they're just not quite buying into it. Everyone else is on board, they're all there. This person's just, I don't get it. Why are we doing this? I just want to do things like we've always done them. But if they don't really have much influence and they don't have, and their strong position, then let them know what's going on, but then that's fine. If the key decision maker is over here, maybe rearrange your priorities, because that's going to be really, really hard. It has been done, though. I've seen that done.
So to go back to my example about the company I was working in London. So really, we were trying to target the CTO. And we as a team did not have a strong relationship with the CTO, although there were other people in the company, like architects and tech leads, which were very much on the same page with us from a technical perspective, and they thought that there was the right problem to solve, there was the right solution. So actually we realized later on that because the architect had been there for a long time, they had already a strong relationship with CTO, we should have probably started by influencing them. And then that message would have landed much, much more effectively to the CTO as well.
Next, I want to talk about the ladder of engagement. So there's someone called Sherry Arnstein, I want to make sure I get her name right. And she wrote a couple of great books that had massive political influence in the 60s and 70s, particularly in the US. She had views on sort of public participation. So how do we get the public to participate and think about urban planning when we're planning our parks, et cetera, health policies, and so on and so forth. And her influence has been widespread and is used a lot now. But actually, the principles that she talks about in her engagement ladder, or the ladder of citizen participation, are very, very relevant to how we work with the people, whether in our close teams, but those people that are further off as well. And starting at the bottom, if an idea is cold, you don't really know much about it, you haven't had time to think about it, and it feels like it's being pushed on you, this change is just coming, you end up in this position of no power. And it can feel very much like you're being manipulated. You're being backed into a corner. I'm being told what to do. That's probably quite a negative thing. We have some big roadworks going on around my house at the moment, and there's a lot of anger from the different people in our village that kind of feel like this. We've not had a choice. We're just being told what we're going to do. It's wrecking our parks, et cetera, et cetera. The same thing can happen with a big change that's going to impact people. If they don't feel like they're a part of it, then they're going to feel manipulated. Climbing up the ladder, you can consult with people. So actually work with them and say, well, here's the problem I've got. Do you agree? Here's a solution I'm proposing. Do you feel like this is actually the thing that we need to be working on? Is that going to add the value? Start to involve them in the process a little bit more. We call that different degrees of tokenism. And it's to token because actually they're not a part of your solution. You just want to consult and involve them a little bit. But really, the gold dust, where you want to get to, is to have those key influencers, those people in your swing votes, feeling like they have power. They actually co-own the solution with you. They feel like they have actually had a vested interest in building and creating what you're doing. And that might mean that you don't decide just the solution with them, you define and decide the problem with them. Because that's really, really powerful. Kind of that relationship I was talking about with that director that I worked with in FinTech. He was very much, when we were talking about problems, I tried really to keep him high up that engagement ladder. So how do you start? If someone's down here, how do you help them move up there? Well, there's a couple of easy, quick wins. Involve them as early as possible. I've said speak their language. Keep the changes quite small. You know, imagine if you've got one brick and you want to try and climb it up a ladder. It's quite easy to do. It's small change. If you've got a whole bunch of bricks and you're trying to throw them in your backpack, et cetera, it's going to get harder and harder to take people up that engagement ladder. I'd also say that when I've been working with, say, developers or tech leads, like I said, we're a very opinionated bunch. Get that? I think it's great, awesome. But likewise, if you're trying to drive a change through, it can be really hard. And so sometimes I've come up with a very simple idea and thought, you know what? This technical leadership team are going to love this. It's going to save us loads of time. We're going to really be able to move much faster. We've got all these problems it's going to solve. And I talk to them about it in a forum, and I just get blown out the water. They just hate it. Just get one or two people that are negative. Massive backlash, because they're all at the bottom of that engagement ladder. So what I was saying is, don't attack, or attack is the wrong word, but don't trying to convince the crowd, convince the individual. So actually before that forum, I met with each of those people, just spent 20 minutes chatting with them about the idea, getting their feedback. Then immediately, before I even walk in the room to present it to the whole group and get buy-in, most of them are already climbing up that engagement ladder. It's a much, much easier thing to do. Finally, milestones. There was a great entrepreneur that I had the privilege of knowing through my university career. And we used to chat about IT and things like that. But the one piece of advice he gave me that stuck was he said, imagine there's two people. So I'm going to talk about Larry. Larry's a bit lazy. And Bert. Now, Bert gets very, very busy. Now, lazy Larry gets given a piece of work by a manager. Reckon it's going to be about 2 weeks. And the same with Bert. Now, Bert's reaction is that he huddles down, locks himself away, and he goes, I'm going to get this done on time. And he really goes full out to make sure that this thing is delivered, it's delivered right, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, software is unpredictable, so along the way, he has a few stumbling blocks. The 2-week deadline goes by, and maybe it slips into 2.5 weeks. He's a few days late. The stakeholder, this person that had given this work, this customer or boss, whatever, was absolutely fuming with Bert. Bert had been busy, but he hadn't actually communicated any sense of progress back. Why have you not been in touch with me? Why didn't you tell me it was late? I've got clients waiting for this. It's going to cost me money. Lazy Larry, on the other hand, he gets given the work, and he's lazy. So he'll code for a little bit in the morning, and then he goes off and plays golf, and he gets back, and he's like, well, there's Xbox there, and it's like Xbox versus code versus Xbox. Oh, I'll just go on the Xbox. But what he does is every day, he just gives the manager a ring. Just a quick 5-minute chat. Yeah, just to let you know, things are progressing. We're slightly behind. This thing's come up. I hope you don't mind. But we're really doing well. His project is 4 weeks rather than 2 weeks. But his manager's happy. Why? Because he's been kept in the loop the whole time. Now, of course, Bert is in the wrong. And I'm certainly not advocating that we should be like Lazy Larry, because that would just be bad. So they're both at fault. But the point is that keeping their people informed and regular updates of things that are important to them is super, super important. So why do milestones matter? Number one, you've done all this work to influence people and keep them up the top of your engagement ladder. You've focused on the right people. As soon as you start your change, don't let that work stop, because all the hard work's done. You're getting there. Keep the people informed. The second thing is that teams are naturally and intrinsically motivated by that sense of progress. I don't know about you, but when developing, I'm not more frustrated than when nothing goes live. There's a developer I worked with, and it was a joke, because every project he seemed to touch for about 1.5 years got canned. He was so frustrated. He worked on something for 3 months, just about there, and they went, yeah, we don't want that anymore. And he was going, I want it to go live! Where you have another team across the corridor, and they're releasing stuff and adding value every week or every 2 weeks, much, much better. They're seeing their work add value. They're seeing that sense of progress. Now, a lot of the time, if our project is bigger, if I say we're tackling something and it does feel like it's 3 months, make sure there's milestones. There's regular checkpoints that you hit every couple of weeks. Sounds obvious, but I'm surprised how many people seem to miss it. And teams, by seeing that achievement every couple of weeks, stay motivated, they stay focused, they want to make sure they're doing the right thing. Also, it means that say you're halfway through this change, and you deliver most of it, but you got all the value. Well, great, you can stop, you can pivot, you can do something else. And finally, of course, like any agile lean advocates, we get the value early. So if we can release something and figure out how to get value out the door, let's do that, absolutely. I just think sometimes we miss the benefits of these first two.
Right, just to give some concrete example of some of the things that I've tried in the past and failed. So let's stick with release, right? Just as an example problem or technical issue that we want to fix, because everybody loves DevOps. Yeah, no, not so much. Okay, I love it.
I love DevOps.
Okay, cool.
DevOps is cool.
So we're trying to fix release, and what I've done, I've went away. I've spent 3 months to redesign, our deployment pipeline. It took like 3 months before I can actually get some value out of it, and I went there, implemented Chef, Puppet, Team City, all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the 3 months period, nothing was shipped to production. It was a failure, and they basically. The influence that I gained with my stakeholders wasn't there anymore, because they said to me, you're going to wait for 3 months, you haven't achieved anything, this project is off. So if we instead change this approach and start to use something like milestones that Dan was talking about, concretely what I've done then in more near future has been much more effective, is more something like this. We know we have problems with release, but let's try to break that problem into mini projects. Mini project that we can do and we can deliver quite quickly, and that yes, the outcome of that is not going to be perfect, but it's going to add a little bit of value. So if we look at something like release, let's say that one of the problems that we had is that we can't test it. So you know what? The very first project that we're going to do, we're going to spend 3 days, spin off a test server on which we can test our deployment pipeline. Yes, it's still the old, slow, not great PowerShell script, but we can test it. So at the end of that, are we still in a position where we think the release is still the biggest problem that we have? Probably yes, because it's still introducing too many problems, it's still actually quite slow. So okay, let's make it a repeatable process. Let's start to automate it. Let's bring in something like Chef or Puppet, let's try to do some sort of infrastructure tools. And then after that, we think, what do we think about now? It's not perfect, we can't actually deploy by clicking a button, it's a manual deployment to actually go on production, but is this good enough now? If the answer is yes, we know it's not perfect, but there are other priorities at the moment. We can safely pause this project, go off and do something else, and then at some point we come back and they say, okay, now is the time to actually do a one-click deployment. If instead, at the end of this, we say, you know what, yes, we can test it, it's better than it was, it's repeatable, but still, there is only Larry that knows how to deploy, where the script is, how to run it, then, okay, it's still bottleneck for us. We really want to go and add something on top of it. So the idea is that you split this project down into mini projects, which you build on top of all the time.
And I think that's it. So we just in terms of what we've done, we've talked about prioritization, tackling problems, different ways that we can do that. We've talked about how we can clearly articulate the problem as well and think about how we redefine maybe our frustrations and what we see in terms of business language and other people that maybe aren't technical. And also different ideas for influencing as well. I hope that there's something that you found useful, that maybe just that one little thing that you can take away and go, you know what, I'm going to try that. That's kind of the benefit I've had over the years of just seeing, wow, there's that one little thing, I want to take that back. It's definitely something I want to use. But with that, I just want to say thank you. You've been great. And if you've got any questions.
Question, don't be shy.
Yep.
You showed us the graph where you had different members of the team and they agree with you or not, right? So we talk about how we should talk with the ones that will be easy to sway in our direction. Well, unfortunately, in real life, we don't have that kind of information. How are we to know which team members are heavily opposed to our ideas and which opposition will be easily swayed?
So I think, and the way that Dom articulated at the beginning was really helpful in that when you're defining your problem, get your whole team bought onto it. Does your team agree with how you prioritize that problem? If they don't, then you're probably in a different position. When it comes to solution, well, there's a whole bunch of ways that we can do that. So I've heard developers that will say, right, okay, we're obviously going to disagree. Let's go and knock up a POC. There might be one developer in the room that says, I don't agree, but everyone else is aligned, in which case you say, well, it's that kind of Amazon, disagree, commit kind of philosophy. So definitely get behind something like that. But that information is really easy to tease out. And remember, this isn't like plotting it exactly on a graph. This is like, right, I've done some chatting and surveying of where things are. Generally, everyone feels like this is the right thing to do. We've done some due diligence. Where are people in this? And if there's that one person you're just really struggling to get over the line, they keep bringing it up. What I'm suggesting is don't worry about wasting all your time and effort on that person. There's other people that you can actually really spend more positive energy helping to influence. Does that make sense?
It does, but still does not help me much.
What's to stop that conversation to find out who agrees and who doesn't?
I can have that kind of conversations in my development team, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But most likely I cannot have that kind of conversation with, I don't know, chief financial officer or other people in high positions. The first time I will know if they agree with my idea or not.
So you come from a position where within the team and the people that you work very close with, you guys agree that that's the problem, and you also agreed on a potential solution. But you're saying you're struggling in bringing that message outside of the team. So I think it's probably very close to what I experienced as well. And what I learned over time is that the things for me was to build strong relationship, even just on a personal level, even with people outside of the area of my area of expertise, but people who actually had already a strong personal relationship with the actual person that I want to tackle, with the decision maker. So one thing I would suggest you to try out is to build a personal relationship with the people that actually can do the decision, or actually with people that have relationship already with other people which actually can help you to that decision.
And the second thing I would say is get there fast as well. If you have a problem and a solution you want to propose, see who blocks you to getting it done quickly, because then you'll figure out very fast, right, okay, there's that person that I can't talk to over there that feels like they're against it. Right, okay, why is that? How do we figure out a way around that? You can do that quite quickly as well. Okay.
Letter that showed
Participation.
participation, yeah. It said that the aim is a green area where you have shared objectives and solutions, problems, and so on. Are you in that situation losing the possibility to drive the change, or do you just leave it?
So the question is, if you get someone to the top of the engagement ladder in the green zone, does that mean that you then might lose the control and the drive to get that change? And what I would encourage people that have got, so they see the problem, articulated it with the team, and actually getting buy-in. If there's a solution which means that you can share it, and if you go away for 2 weeks and it carries on without you, that's perfect. Even if the solution isn't exactly what you thought it was going to be. If it makes say sometimes, and I'm like this, I'm super ambitious. I'm like, right, I'm going to go big step over here. But actually, if all I do is this, just a small step in the right direction, I think that's progress. And that's the bit about the milestones and that kind of thing as well, is the whole point around influencing is people on the journey with you. And I think that's a lot of the time is more important than the solutions themselves.
I would be scared. Maybe I recognize there is a problem, and I put everybody together, and I see that the group altogether is going for a known anti-pattern. And let's write spaghetti code. Yes, everybody agrees. Shall we go for that?
I think we're out of time. I think we should definitely carry on chatting about that, though. So yeah, it's cool. But thank you very much. I
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
guys.
all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.